Hello everybody, my name is Zoro Chaos and today I am going to be covering the DLC additional content from Lords and Lands and Book of Tales, additional races for the Witcher Tabletop RPG. I hope you enjoy this video. So we're going to be covering Halflings, Vran, Gnomes, and Werebbubs. In that particular order, we are going to start with Halflings. So to start, we're going to read the little lore blurb and then read the rest. Interesting folk, Halflings. Sort of as a dwarf, but not as stocky. Got pointy ears like an elf, but they ain't as in tune with nature and whatnot. Hey, if it weren't for their big hairy feet, I'd say they're a crossbreed. All kidding aside, though, they're fine folk. Strangest part about a halfling's the way they sort of repel magic or something. Nobody knows why, but halflings are immune to certain magics or some such. Other spells and elixirs and whatnot just don't work on them. I think they came through during the conjunction, so maybe it's something to do with their home. These days you can find halflings living in human cities making their way in the background. Don't really try to hide, they just don't come up much. Since they don't claim land and they like living among humans, they don't get harassed as much. So, they are magic resistant. To their magic resistant nature, halflings are unable to channel magic through their bodies and cannot become mages or priests. So, in this RPG, they have kind of a little bit of a certain races can not be certain classes, like halflings. They can't use magic, so they can't be mages or priests. That also means they also can't be druids, which is within Tome of Chaos, made into a separate class or profession, as it were. Halfling life path. Halflings are often lumped into the same non-human category as elves and dwarfs. However, unlike elves, who have Dol Blathana, or dwarves who have Mahakam, halflings have no dedicated homeland. Halflings prefer to live in human settlements. When determining your life path, you could choose to come from a human kingdom or the Elderlands. If you come from the Elderlands, you roll 1d10. On an even result, you come from Dol Bathana. On odd result, you come from Mahakam. Perks. Nimble. Halflings are naturally nimble and dexterous people. Halflings gain an inherent +1 to their athletics skill. Farmhand. Halflings are often drawn to agriculture thanks to years of tradition and apparently inborn aptitude at animal husbandry. Halflings gain an inherent +2 to their wilderness survival skill when calming, taming, or controlling animals. Magic resistant. For unknown reasons, halflings are resistant to certain forces of magic. Halflings gain an inherent +5 the resist magic skill, are able to roll resist magic to negate the effects of any spell that would affect their mind and would not normally be allowed. However, Witcher potions and other magic potions do not positively affect halflings, even if they succeed at the endurance check. So they still get poisoned from potions. Be aware. They are tolerated within the north. They are equal in Nilfgaard, Skellige, Dol B'Thana, and Mahakam. They can be mutating halflings. Halflings can be mutated with the mage's mutate ability. However, due to their magic resistance, halflings cannot be mutated by blue mutagens, which is a video I'm going to explain down the line. So this is a society blurb. Halfling society. Halfling society can be a difficult thing to explain because they are one of the few non-human races that have never had a unified country. Halflings have lived amongst the other races for centuries and are well integrated into their adopted societies. They tend to coexist with the other races, forming small halfling communities within various cities and making themselves indispensable to larger society by creating thriving businesses and providing numerous products and services. Notably, halflings are excellent with livestock and excel at trades like milling, beekeeping, cooking, tailoring, and the like. It's likely that any halfling you encounter has their hand in an artisan business or has some amount of investment of crowns in the local craftsman. Of course, not every halfling goes into business, and members of their race do act as thieves, squayatel fighters, doctors, and the like. On the whole, however, halflings generally keep to their own and avoid getting involved in other people's problems. It's not that a halfling won't go out of their way to help someone, but they usually need a good reason to do so. Largely, halflings have maintained their unsteady place in human society by not causing trouble or making a fuss. Unfortunately, when tensions are high, halflings are often the first to suffer due to their size. And that's for the next page is for a future video. So off to Book of Tales. Now this is where we are going to talk about the gnomes, Vran, and Werebbubs, and where their social standing is. For gnomes, they're tolerated in the north and equal everywhere else. For Vran, they're hated and feared in the north, tolerated and feared in Nilfgaard, hated and feared in Skellige, hated in Dol Blathanna, and tolerated in Mahakam. Werebbubs are tolerated in the north, Nilfgaard, Skellige, and Dol Blathanna, but equal in Mahakam. Within the Witcher lore, these are gnomes. You probably met a gnome in The Witcher 3. I'm going to read their blurb for you now. With their eye for detail and exceptional sensory abilities, gnomes are the finest craftsmen on the continent. The finest swords in the world, or Gwehar, are gnomish. They also excel in alchemy, metallurgy, and engineering. For their majestic works, gnomes are tolerated in human societies, though they rarely visit. Gnomes are generally known for being friendly, puckish, and liking to party. They're less abrasive than dwarves, less stern than elves, and less fussy than halflings, all which contribute to their appeal, according to humans. In small human communities, a gnome can expect not only tolerance, but also friendship. Trouble might arise for them in larger human cities, however. Gnomes form large communes, much like dwarves do, but tend to structure themselves in a less authoritarian manner. These communes, the most notable two being in the Tir Tokar and Mahakam Mountains, are typically led by a particularly respected gnome who gathers consensus at the large people's assemblies, where the commune governs itself through direct democracy. Gnomes have a long history of friendship with the dwarves of the continent, especially with the dwarves of Mahakam, with whom they have lived peacefully for many hundreds of years, working alongside them in mines and workshops. It is better that they by large sequester themselves away from human societies and their mountain communes. Human rulers have proven themselves not even to be above jealousy and would love to gain gnomish secrets to better their armies. And they are certain not above kidnapping. Many of the new developments in human warfare could use improvements from gnomish technology, and who knows what they might do to get it. Their perks: pleasant demeanor. Across the continent, gnomes are known for their fun-loving, joyous personalities and puckish natures. Among humans, gnomes are often considered the most pleasant of the non-humans. Gnomes gain an inherent +1 to charisma. Eye for detail. While elves and dwarves are among the greatest craftsmen in the world, gnomes possess the finest eye for detail on the entire continent, making them excellent at many different crafts. It's not unusual to find a gnome who trades in gem cutting, swordsmith, and alchemy all at the same time. Gnomes gain an inherent +2 to any 3 craft skills they choose. This bonus ignores the modifier for learning difficult skill. So in this game, just like in Cyberpunk Red, difficult skills are ×2, and we will get into the IP cost for difficult skills in the leveling up section of the of future video. Small stature. actually subtracting first, and then small stature. A gnome's keen sense for detail extends to all of their senses, including their sense of smell. Gnomes gain an inherent +1 to their awareness skill, as well as the ability to track things by scent alone. Just like witchers, they're about equally good at it. Small stature. Gnomes are the smallest race on the continent, measuring around 1 meter tall on average. While they can be just as resilient as other races, they're generally physically weaker. Gnomes take an inherent -5 to physique and calculate their hand-to-hand damage, bonus melee damage, and encumbrance as though their body was 3 points lower. However, a gnome can slip into any area at least 0.5 meters wide with no issue. They can fully conceal themselves behind an item or creature at least 1 meter. So we'll go into encumbrance and everything in a future video. Vran, sometimes referred to as lizard folk. The Vran are among the oldest and most physically varied races on the continent, and unfortunately also among the most despised by humans. In the time before the landing of the exiles, the Vran were a prevalent and accomplished culture who spanned the continent from the Great Sea to the Blue Mountains and beyond. Among the sapient races of the continent, Vran were known for their carefully constructed cities, their unique architecture, and their hoards of gold and jewels. Despite being known as dispassionate and cold, Vran earned a great deal of respect for their cool-headed politics and pervasive culture. Even today, many favorite aphorisms used by scholars across the continent have their origins in Vrani culture. The history of the Vran is one of the bloodiest history in all of the Elder races. Though they managed decent relations with dwarves and gnomes, the Vran often came to blow with the elves, who shared borders and territory with them. Over many years, the elves attacked several Vrani cities across the foothills of the Blue Mountains and even covertly created biological weapons which they used to wipe out Vrani cities. By the time the landing of the exiles brought humans to the continent, the Vran were already in decline, having lost so many of their cities to the elves and having suffered great casualties. But they persisted. The Vran don't believe in an afterlife and so appreciate their life as it was the only one they will ever experience. Unfortunately, the Nordlings' arrival on the continent largely spelled doom for Vran society. The superstitious and volatile human settlers took poorly to the Vran, who didn't have the luxury of looking passively human like elves and dwarves. Many humans called the Vran demons, and other more pragmatic humans took this as an opportunity to seize the great wealth of the Vran. Already weakened by their many wars with the elves, Vran fought valiantly but were pushed to the edge of extinction by the Nordlings, fleeing into the depths of the Blue Mountains and beyond. Now the Vran live as third-class citizens in human settlements, as refugees in mountain societies. A Vran is a rare sight in both the Northern Realms and Nilfgaard. Vrani travelers are often the subject of hushed conversations in local taverns. Perks. Calm-hearted. Vran are known by many to be heartless creatures of no empathy to speak of. However, this is far from the truth. Vran have as much capability for empathy as any human, but they far more reserved and less likely to show their emotion. Vran gain an inherent +1 resist coercion. Claws and fangs. While the Vran are known to use weapons, they are also capable of dealing grievous harm to their enemies with their natural claws and fangs. A Vran has two natural weapons they cannot be disarmed. A Vran's punches and kicks deal lethal damage. They can make a melee attack with their fangs, which deals 3d6 damage with a 50% chance of poisoning the target. So we will get into percentiles and percentages down the road, just know that you roll a percentile dice and you have to roll under the 50% threshold to cause a status effect. Scaled hide. Vran have a natural layer of scales, which grants them a certain amount of natural resistance to damage. Vran scales have a natural stopping power of 4. This SP cannot be lowered by weapon attacks or ablation damage. So they essentially have nearly the same perk as dwarves do. Reptilian physiology. The Vran are the only accepted sapient race that is also reptilian, and their physiology differs ever so slightly from that of humans and other non-human races. This difference may be small, but it makes a big impact in two ways. First, a Vran's body is different enough that any doctor who is not a Vran has not treated a Vran successfully in the past takes a -2 penalty when using first aid on a wounded Vran, and -5 penalty when attempting to stabilize or treat critical wounds on a wounded Vran. Secondly, if a Vran is affected by the frozen condition, they take a -2 to all actions until 1d6 rounds after the condition is ended. So that's pretty bad. Werebbubs. Werebbubs are among the less humanoid elder races to be nearly destroyed by the landing of the exiles many centuries ago. Much like their Vran counterparts, Werebbubs lived in the lowland valleys and mountainous foothills of the continent, practicing age-old traditions and seeking to live in relative harmony with the land around them. The Werebbubs were and still are a proud race with a long history of heroics and valor. In fact, instead of worshipping gods, Werebbubs. This is a Werebub. See, this is why I said they're kind of like a beaver, but without the beaver tail. Worship the memories of their ancestors and the spirits of the legendary heroes and heroines. Werebubs are raised with stories of great warriors and wise sages who use their gifts to help their people and defeat terrifying enemies. Unfortunately, the Werebub would find difficulty negotiating with their neighbors and often found themselves displaced by the powerful elven communities that began to crop up in the lowland valleys. As time passed and the elves continued their expansion, the Werebubs were pushed farther and farther into the foothills until they were almost entirely relegated to the mountains. There, the Werebubs attempted to make the best of their situation, forming deeply ingrained mountain communities, adjusting to the rocky cliffs and valleys of their new home. For a time, this worked well and many Werebub communities flourished. But this peace came to an end shortly after the landing of the exiles. After dominating the lowland valleys, the humans looked to the mountains for ore and gemstones. Not being fond of mining, the Werebubs have hardly touched the many deposits of minerals in their mountain homes, which left a treasure trove of resources for the taking. When the Werebubs refused to let the humans mine in their mountain communities, the peace came to an end, and human armies marched into the mountains, laying waste to hundreds of clans and communities. These days, Werebubs are a rare sight on the continent. They stick to the mountains, living in reclusive subterranean and high peak communities, training almost exclusively with the dwarves. Even after centuries of abuse at the hands of the other races, the Werebubs are a proud race who refuses to bend the knee and conform to the other communities around them. Even the few Werebubs in the lowlands are loath to change their ways and still honor the traditions of their ancestors. They are proud to be different and nothing can take that pride from them. That's why I like them. They're cool. Lion-hearted. Werebbubs are not the largest race on the continent, but they are among the bravest. Their culture values heroism, and young Werebbubs hear tales of ancient ancestral heroes. They gain an inherent +1 to courage. Strange physiology. Their body and metabolism work in a manner entirely alien to humans and most other elder races. When grievously wounded, some aspects of their physiology goes to high gear, often allowing them to survive wounds that would quickly kill any other person. Whenever a Werebbub takes a critical wound, they can roll an endurance check with a DC equal to the DC required to stabilizing the critical wound. If they succeed, the critical wound is immediately considered stabilized. Players may only make this roll in the moment the Werebbub takes the wound and cannot be attempted again in the case of a failure. Though they get a once per critical wound to make a check to see if they can be stabilized without suffering the negative effects of that critical wound. That is really good, in my opinion. Razor teeth. While Werebbub don't possess the powerful jaws and venomous fangs of the Vran, their teeth are razor sharp and honed to a fine edge. A Werebbub can make a melee attack with their fangs, which deals 2d6 damage and has improved armor piercing. Now that is a specific keyword that we will go over in the weapon section of of this video series. I hope you enjoy. I'm sorry. Recording this is so hard. It's a lot of yapping. Poor eyesight. In general, Werebbubs suffer from poor eyesight, while their keen hearing allows them to navigate the world without any significant problems. They are far from the most perceptive race on the continent. They take an inherent -4 on awareness checks, thanks to this poor vision. If a Werebbub is called on to make a perception check based only on hearing, such as hearing footsteps upstairs or listening for growling wolves, this penalty does not apply. So if you want to make them do a sight check, they get a -4, which means they are more likely to fail. If you want them to do any other kind of check, they're perfectly able to do it. So that is it for the races of the continent. I hope you enjoyed. We will talk about professions next time. Ta-ta and cheers.